Good morning, everyone. I'm Vince Edwards. I'm the technical account manager at Blend, and I have the pleasure of introducing John Whipple, who's Blend's product manager, and then also Rahul Grewal, who's also software engineering manager at Blend. And today we'll be discussing how AWS support is helping Blend revolutionize the lending space. So, with that being said, I'll hand it over to John to tell us about this journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Vince. Yeah, I'm probably the least technical person in the room. I'll keep it super quick. Just wanted to set some high-level business context and appreciate getting to crash the party. But yeah, you can go ahead to you got the slides up. Yeah, at a super high level, just for background on what Blend is, we're a SaaS software platform serving financial institutions in the consumer lending space, heavy focus on mortgage lending, but also across other kinds of consumer lending. We work with, generally larger financial institutions, about half of the top 50 banks in the US. You can go forward one more. And just from, some of the use cases, everything spanning from mortgage loan originations all the way through to consumer loans, credit cards, that kind of thing. As Rahul will get into, we have a pretty complicated kind of technical architecture just from the standpoint of we have many different services connecting to third-party integrations, a lot of workflow orchestration, and a pretty broad set of features and functionality that our backend infrastructure has to support. As I'm sure we'll hear many times in the presentation today, thinking about generative AI, agentic AI is a big area of focus that we're thinking about in our core products. We've been collaborating with the AWS team to explore some use cases there. So definitely happy to field some questions on that front. You can go forward one more. Just to touch on sort of like, how we think about the business metrics and KPIs. We always really try to align our technical initiatives towards customer impact. Our products and workflows, they mainly help the banks that use our software improve conversion rates, close more loans, per employee, that kind of thing. So, you can just kind of keep that context in the back of your mind as we talk about our initiatives here. Obviously, happy to answer questions around this, but I'll hand it over to Rahul to dig into some of the more technical details.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Good to be here. I wanted to chat a little bit about how we as an engineering team have been able to accomplish some of these sort of business metrics that John outlined. The first thing to call out, in order to be best in class as a fintech platform, you need to be able to move fast across several different domains. So let me double click into that. Mortgage, let's start with just sort of home lending, which is part of what we do. It's a fairly complicated space with multiple domains. If you think of what needs to happen during a mortgage, we need to be able to facilitate capture of a borrower's information. We need to be able to figure out eligibility, which requires querying for interest rates. Now, this is not something Blend does within our own data center, right? We have to reach out to capital markets data providers to be able to know, what the interest rate is. That's changing every 15 minutes. We have to figure out the right fees to apply. There's a lot of compliance rules around depending on which county you're in. Fees can be different. So again, those are fees engines we have to call out to. There is getting borrowers to sign various documents. Again, we partner with e-sign providers to be able to accomplish that. And then there's the closing process, which itself is a multi-party collaboration between the settlement agent, the borrower, the notary. Now, you can imagine each of these areas as an entirely different domain. And in order to be able to move fast, we need to be able to have multiple teams specializing and operating in each of these domains. So actually, we'll stay back on that slide for a little bit. One thing I wanted to call out here, the way we've been able to accomplish this sort of collaborative yet independent structure of teams is using a microservice architecture. So as many people who have done startups before, we started off with a monolith, which was one service. Obviously, that was very early on. And as we started growing as a company, we figured out what different domains and kinds of data we need to store. So we split this up into lots of different microservices, each team owning their own microservice, as well as their own distributed state. So we do also use AWS RDS, as well as Aurora. And this is for more of the disaster recovery. and failover guarantees that are required from our platform. Next slide. The other thing to call out here, one of Blend's cultural principles is empowerment over control. So we don't really force teams to operate in a certain way. Teams are running their own microservices and acting in a very sort of autonomous fashion. And so basically, we have a very small infra team at Blend. It's single digits. And that it's sort of a testament to the kind of tools and support we've gotten from the AWS team that we've been able to scale fairly small infra team, build some tools, provide it to individual product teams, and then scale our overall set of microservices to fairly large number, 200 microservices, lots of different Kubernetes pods. We're using Kubernetes as well as Docker. And yeah, we're using EKS to be able to sort of easily provision these pods and do auto scaling. We'll move on to the next one. The other thing to call out, a lot of home lending and this whole space is very compliance heavy. There's a lot of PII that we deal with. There's a lot of data compliance requirements. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of security best practices we have to follow. At Blend, we have 3 different environments. There's a sandbox environment. This is basically where code gets auto-deployed as soon as it merges. There's a beta environment further up, and this is where our customers are testing and signing off on features before they get to production. And then there's a final production environment where you have actual live PII. And we have strong sort of separation between each of these 3 environments. Now, there are some services that require, configuration or internal control services that require access to all of these environments, and we're using AWS VPC peering to be able to accomplish that. And next slide. And this is just an architecture diagram. I know I said a lot of words, but this is probably a better, easier to digest representation of some of the different AWS components that we're using, from Kubernetes to PostgreSQL to Aurora, public and private subnets for internal and external facing services, CloudFront CDN for our static assets, and yeah, Elastic Load Balancer to be able to deal with the sort of peak time load that we get during the day. And again, these are a lot of different components that we're using. It's hard to build expertise in all of these. Luckily, we have pretty good relationship with our AWS support team to be able to sort of figure out when we're having an issue with one of these, where to turn to and how to debug some of them. And with that, I'll hand it over to Vince.
All right, thank you, Rahul. And also thank you, John, for sharing the story of Blend and how you guys are maintaining speed as well as distributed ownership. So I'll take this opportunity to talk about how enterprise support is assisting Blend with these goals and aligning with the business outcomes. First, the alignment to the TAM and enterprise support team, and as well as the account team. So as mentioned before, we are an extension of their team, and whenever Blend needs us, we're available to either work through any support issues that may come up or any business outcomes that we may act as an extension of their distributed team. So for instance, the teams operate in different groups, small infras, as Rahul mentioned, and we can align specialists to those teams and or support the teams throughout the engagements, aligning with their business outcomes. Outside of that, being able to assist the team with rapidly resolving issues. Of course, with enterprise support, we get the enhanced response time, but we, as myself as the TAM and the rest of the account team, we make sure that we align the right resources, of course, to the business outcome, because we do have, more insight on where the team's trying to go and what they're trying to do from a product perspective, right? So outside of that, while the team is growing in speed or moving at high velocity, we are making sure that we maintain cost optimization strategies that allow them to move efficiently and at a great operational pace while going fast. To support the distributed ownership portion of Blend's outcome, of course, we align the right resources to the team based on our conversations and based on what we know that they're trying to do for this whole revolutionizing of the lending space. And then, for instance, we'll work through an architecture review. So while, moving fast, some of the key areas the team will need to focus on is, reliability, security, of course, especially with the PII data, and optimization strategy. So we covered, in this case, we covered all 5 pillars with high emphasis on the FSI lens, as well as security, cost optimization, and reliability, given the RDS cluster with Aurora Fellow. Also, for distributed ownership, we align workshops, technical engagements to help the team move faster, because the distributed ownership also, there's a caveat of growing that team and being able to add expertise that the team may not already have, as mentioned before, and we can kind of align the teams with that, whether it's Gen AI, databases, or EKS. And with that being said, just like to go over a call to action, is when working with your account team, TAM, working with us to define your business outcomes helps us align the right resources. When we determine the KPIs, it let us know, timelines, what we can expect so that we can make sure we do that efficiently. Secondly, working with your TAM to align technical engagements to your outcomes. So for instance, as Blend was scaling their RDS instances and the workloads there, we worked to align a RDS workshop so that the team had the right resources to answer questions around security, reliability, and any type of scaling that needed to happen in that case. And finally, as I mentioned, the explore well-architected framework review on your critical workloads is in this case to move fast and also to make sure that the team is prepared for Gen AI initiatives. We work to cover the key business outcomes around security, operational efficiency, cost optimization. So prioritizing these findings and and outcomes outside of a well-architected review allows us to make sure that we align properly, and that as we're going through this partnership, we cover those goals. And with that being said, I would like to thank John and Raul for joining me for this presentation, and we would like to open the floor for any questions.